Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Leader in You podcast brought to you by EMC Leaders. We're so excited to be here. My name is Polina, and I co-host this podcast with the amazing Dr. Lola Gershfeld.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Polina. So nice to be here with you.
Yes, I'm so excited to be back. We are going to talk today about something that is such an important aspect of understanding how you play a role in disconnections, conflicts, and difficult situations that can be happening at the workplace or in your workplace relationships. So we're going to learn today what are raw spots and what are the ways they show up for the different roles you take in the relationship, whether you're a withdrawer or pursuer, and then what's very common that occurs, and then the patterns that are created because those raw spots get hit. So we're going to start today on talking about what are raw spots. I like to use the word sensitivities, but it's just that part in us that we get triggered by, we get awakened in a negative way, and those negative feelings start to come up, and then that's oftentimes, what takes over our ability to stay emotionally balanced. But before we get into it today, I want to remind everyone that next Wednesday, Dr. Lola is going to be teaching an amazing webinar. Are you excited, Dr. Lola?
Yes, I'm very excited.
And the webinar is called The Skill L&D Trainers Weren't Taught, but Need to Know.
Exactly.
Right? They desperately need this skill. So next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. It's a free webinar. It's so fantastic. You're going to want to join. And if you'd like information, where could they sign up?
They can contact us. They can contact us with some that will send them the link to sign up. They
Yes.
can contact us at emc@emcleaders.com or lola@emcleaders.com.
Yes. So go ahead and email us if you'd like to sign up for the webinar happening next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern.
January 28th.
January 28th.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to it. What are the raw spots? Tell us, Dr. Lola.
Well, raw spots are sensitivities. I like your terminology, sensitivities, and they are sensitive. We all have raw spots. Raw spots, I would say, they are like a scar that appeared in the moment when we were hurt or when we felt somehow devalued or some injury that we experienced in a relationship, whether it could be in our past relationships or it could be in our present relationships, it could be in our personal relationship, it could be in our teamwork relationships. But basically, they are sensitivities that come from our interactions with people that we care about, that we depend on. And they always reflect that moment when someone who we depend on was perceived not responding to us, or somehow we felt not valued by them. We felt maybe not accepted by them. So we got injured, but we may have decided not to talk about, or we don't know how to talk about it. So we just even shut it down, or we try to avoid it. And those sensitivities, they stay with us in those moments. And what's interesting about these sensitivities, these raw spots, that as we go through our interactions and as we work with people around us, if we don't address these sensitivities, they start to accumulate. And the more they accumulate, the more sensitive we become. You know how people say, you're so sensitive. Well, I'm sensitive because we don't have a secure relationship, right? I'm sensitive because I still have that raw spot that may be hit for me in the past, and I have not healed it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you said raw spot that hit for me in the past and that I have not healed it yet. This is what I like about understanding our sensitivities. They're not sensitivities that could forever be impacting us in a negative way, but the importance of recognizing what those sensitivities are is to notice that in the moment that those sensitivities get triggered, they get hit in a conversation or in a situation or in some sort of connection, and they start to bring up, feelings that are painful, then you can recognize it. And we could immediately be able to tend to those painful feelings instead of allowing that trigger to kind of take over the situation and shift us into a negative cycle. So that's really what we want here when it comes to understanding our triggers and understanding the sensitivities that can really impact us in a negative way so that we can become aware, slow down in that moment when it happens, and be able to tend to those painful feelings instead of allowing those painful feelings to take over the situation.
Exactly. And our brains are so sensitive to the signals that we receive from our team members, from our managers, from our peers, from direct reports that we work with. And that brain, it really assesses the safety and danger because connection with those people is key to our survival. So, and being vulnerable, I mean, comes with the territory in our relationships, right? And being in a relationship is to be vulnerable. So the choice is really how we deal with these vulnerabilities. Are we able to share with each other when our raw spot get hit? Do we feel safe in order to reach out and say, hey, that hit my raw spot? Are we going to go into defense and try to explain? Or are we going to say, thank you for sharing, that you are important to me and I want to know about your raw spots. I want to know what sensitivities you have, because we are we impact each other no matter what we intend to do or not. We impact each other. So I feel like the more abilities we have to talk about it, we become stronger, and we become stronger in our relationships, and we can openly talk about these vulnerabilities and help each other with them.
Yeah, I also think that, this is important to understand in someone else as well. So, one of the very common things we hear is that oftentimes people don't want to share what someone said or did that hurt them because they feel bad. They don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. And this is really where sharing your sensitivities comes into such an important role, because when you do share your sensitivities, you actually are giving the opportunity for someone else to get to know you. And when they have that opportunity to share their feelings or their sensitivities, specifically their raw spots, then it's them giving you the opportunity and the chance to get to know them on that level as well. And we remove the judgment, criticism, shame, and blame aspect of a conversation when we share the sensitivities, because everyone has different sensitivities. And to a degree, because there are 16 that we have here pinpointed on the process that are very common, very, very common, and play roles in all different patterns and maybe show up on the content side a little bit differently, but all those sensitivities are very similar. And so when we can identify the sensitivities that's happening within us, and then the other person can also share what's happening within in them, we really get to know each other on a different level, so we can be aware as well and how to connect with a person that has those sensitivities. And sometimes, you hear people say like, well, I'm not sensitive, like you have to be tough, and I'm not sensitive to anything. That's so funny when I hear that, when people are like, no, I don't have any sensitivities. I'm not sensitive. I'm strong. And the thing is, like, just like Dr. Lola said, everyone has sensitivities. It's actually not humanly possible, unless you're a robot, you know, the ones that, is it Elon Musk? Did he make those robots? And even then, they're sensitive because they, like, if you say such not nice things to them, you know, they're like, oh, I don't understand what's happening. So they do the avoidant, you know, the
Yeah,
avoidant
absolutely.
attachment.
Exactly.
So I think every single person, whether you'd like to admit it or not, has these sensitive raw spots. They're there, they're present, and you know, it's such a powerful way to really connect and understand and learn about someone, to stop the cycle from becoming a negative one, or to shift a negative cycle to a positive one.
Exactly. And in a way, you're actually saying something really important, because if we are not able to share those raw spots, even identify, right? If we're not able to slow it down and identify a raw spot, we become more sensitive, and we actually more likely to either become angry or shut down and get
Mhm.
caught in these terrible negative cycles by our protective behaviors. And what happens is these interactions, when we do use our protective behaviors, they actually create more raw spots, and we become more sensitive, and that keeps the cycle going indefinitely. So you mentioned about the 16 raw spots, and definitely what I working with different teams and different companies, what I notice is that the most common raw spot that I see is number one, being excluded. Like
Mhm.
when people send emails and people get excluded from either emails, or they get excluded from it being
Meeting.
invited to a meeting.
Mhm.
Right away that raw spot gets hit. And number two, not being valued or appreciated for their work, skill, or performance. That is a very common. I think that would probably be number one common raw spot that I hear. I also hear like number four, not acknowledging the point you're making, is
Mhm.
very, very common. And I
Number
would say
10.
number 10, definitely communicating your needs and getting somehow ignored or minimized. And it's interesting because sometimes we're not very clear about communicating our needs, and that we're not even clear about what is it that we need, and we definitely miss those cues and miss those communication when we're trying to connect. So when the raw spot hit, you really find yourself out of balance and disorganized in a way. And so emotions take over, and they shift in a way, in a dramatic way that often seems to make no sense. Why this person behaves such a way, or why you're so reactive, like my gosh, I just asked you about the deadline, or my gosh, I just asked you about the meeting. Why are you being so mean or so rude or so reactive in a way? So, and that really shows that it hit the raw spot in a very deep way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also, you know, probably wonder, where do these raw spots come from? And that's what I wanted to kind of tie in when you were talking about how they show up in all different kinds of relationships. Because the thing is, people come to work with raw spots already triggered from previous experiences that they have not yet healed, given attention and space and time for understanding, validating those experiences. So, what happens is these raw spots were created long ago in our patterns with our relationship with our parents, and you know, as we got older with significant others and possibly children and possibly previous coworkers or previous experiences at work. So it's very interesting because when you think about a person that maybe you have a conflict or difficult situation with, and they have raw spots and you have raw spots, those are common raw spots you have already been experiencing your entire life. and they have already been experiencing their entire life. So I like to really understand and take that perspective when I'm learning about raw spots for another person, because I think a lot of times, because blaming comes into play and judging someone um, comes into play when we get raw spots hit and someone, like Dr. Lola said, becomes mean or rude. Saying someone is mean or rude is already, right, a judgment and a criticism. So so what happens, we have those patterns of responding to the way someone responds to their raw spot being hit. Well, let me say that again so you guys heard that loud and clear. So we have a way of responding to someone's response of their raw spot getting hit. And so what Dr. Lola was saying was, if we recognize the raw spots and are able to really truly understand someone else's raw spots and our own, our response to their reaction changes. That's the shift that we're really looking for when we learn about the EMC process and we are able to really integrate what this process is all about, because we can shift the way that we respond to someone's triggered sensitivities.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying. This is so key because if we are able to slow it down and to recognize that their response is to the raw spot that hit for them, we become more empathic to them, right? We have this relentless empathy for them to see and slow it down so we don't respond to our raw spot. We almost, like when they respond, it's like a bullet, right? Comes across. And what we do is we kind of like shift our body, say, oh, okay, I see the bullet, but I'm able to slow it down and it just passes me instead of hitting me. And I get that they're responding to their raw spot. You start to recognize these raw spots that people are experiencing in the moment when they're responding. That takes a lot of, I think, balance. That's takes.
Have you seen the movie Kung Fu Panda?
No.
No? Okay, you have to watch it. At the number, I want to say there's 4 of them, I think. But number 3, so the panda is, fighting for the safety of the country. And there's I think maybe it's the second one or the third one, but there's a moment at the end where he has to like beat the master peacock. And so, but he gets like blown away at one point back to his childhood, and he has like a very traumatic childhood, or I should say pandahood. And his master explains to him how he has to learn how to find inner peace, okay, in order to beat the great evil peacock that wants to take over the world, the China. And so he goes on this journey finding inner peace. And so at the very end, it's like he's got to live through his trauma and understand what happened in that trauma and how he responded to that trauma in order to find the inner peace. But at the very end of the movie, he's fighting the peacock, and the peacock has these huge they're like missile, like the tanks with missiles, like big missiles, and no one can beat them because obviously they kill the person that they hit, or it's like a huge bomb in a village. But he's standing on this little rock in the middle of the ocean, like this little broken thing in the middle of the ocean, and the peacock has like 10 boats with this big tank on each of the boats. And he's like, light them, and he's telling all of his, army men to light them. And these balls are flying at the panda, and he's just like moving, just like you said, he's moving out of the way. He's using his hands. He can't, they're like fireballs, so he can't touch them actually, but he's using his hands, and he like takes the energy and just like pushes the balls out of his way. And then he like takes the balls and he like throws it back, and then the peacock dies. But the point is, he's able to stay on this little tiny piece of broken plank in the middle of the ocean, with 10 tanks coming at him with fireballs, and is able to balance and move the energy. And then at the very end, he finds his master, because he's defeated the great peacock. And the master goes, "Oh, you found inner peace." And one of his co-workers, because they all have a team of fighters, and such a young age. So it's that same concept, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what the whole beauty of this process is, that it teaches you how to share your raw spots with each other, how to understand how we impact each other, and not to get defensive about it, but to recognize that these raw spots come from our past. And we do get sensitive, but what's the beauty of it is, as we share these, and as we can help each other to respond to these raw spots, like you said, to give each other opportunity to be there for each other and respond to this, and just be present, right? To say, I hear you, that must be very difficult for you when that raw spot hits for you, that is hard for you, and I'm right here, you're not alone in that moment. It's actually very healing, number one. And that raw spot becomes less sensitive, it's not as deep, it's not as becomes as raw. And emotions really tell us whether we are safe or not safe. And when we have the opportunity to heal the raw spots together, we become stronger, and we can rebalance ourselves, we can co-regulate each other. And that's the beauty of it, right? That's the beauty of it. I just did a session just a few days ago, and this person was saying that my raw spot comes from my past, saying that I was always afraid that people will yell at me. When I was a child, I was afraid that people will yell at me. And so right now, when I'm sitting in the meeting and somehow I don't know how to respond, my fear is that somebody's going to yell at me because I'm not responding. So I think the vulnerability, it's hard for people to share that vulnerability, obviously, and learn how to share that. But once people have the practice of it, it becomes so much easier to resolve issues and to solve problems.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think that the challenge of holding that space and really listening to someone's raw spot or experiences, because in the moment it's not really said in that way, and that's what we're trying to get at too, is that understanding your raw spots gives you the power to identify and express what's happening with you at the time that the conflict is occurring. So when you have a conflict or a difficult situation or a disconnection in some way or shape or form, and it moves really fast, and our emotions get very big quickly, if we have that ability to recognize which raw spots are being hit at the moment that it's happening, we can do what Dr. Lola is saying, which is slow down, and we can be able to say, instead of using ineffective ways such as judgment, shame, criticism, blame, which turns the cycle into a negative spiral, we could shift into sharing the raw spots that are being hurt at the time that it's happening. Actually, I use this with my team, but I also use this with my kids very effectively, because if you just say it out loud, the intention typically is not to hit the raw spots, right, of the other person. Those intentions are to express the difficulty and the fear or whatever that's happening within us. But you can make it, make it known what is happening.
Exactly. And again, the whole point is we are wired for connection. So when we can open up with this vulnerability, Brené Brown talks about being vulnerable all the time, right? But how are we going to be vulnerable if we don't have the language for what that looks like? And we don't have a role model. What does that vulnerability looks like? So when we have these raw spots, a list of raw spots, it gives people sort of a ground to hold on to, like something that they can rely on and say, hey, number 5 hit me, when someone turns away from me, or hey, number 10 hit me. It's communicating my needs and getting ignored. And it becomes relieving. I think you don't have to sit there and wonder what is my raw spot. You have a list, and it becomes
Mhm.
very easy to refer to it.
Yes. The only way you can get a hold of this list is if you take our course,
Yeah.
emcleaders.com. But I want to also add that, this is a really great tool to be able to reach when you are struggling. It's like if you are on the side of the road because your car won't start and you need to start a battery and you happen to have the what's it
Cables.
yeah, the
Yeah.
cables to connect someone else's car, right? That's the tool. We
Yeah.
can grab it, connect the car, jumpstart the battery, the car's ready to go. It's the same thing, right? We have this tool, you reach for it, you share your raw spots, you talk about your emotions, and you are kind of jump starting back into a positive experience with a coworker. So yeah, it's really valuable, very, very supportive and helpful to creating that thriving environment for the workplace. And the great thing is, as you learn these tools, you can also integrate and use them in your life outside of work. It is not just how can I improve my work relationships, it is how can I improve my relationships in my life so I can be happier and healthier because of it. So
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this
well,
was fun.
really quick before we leave, I do want to go over some of the raw spots. So, if you are a pursuer withdrawer, there's different common raw spots that come up. So, remember, we've talked about the pursuer and withdrawer cycle before. We've talked about the roles and what it looks like. And just to give you a brief refresher, withdrawer is typically someone who shuts down, who wants to run away or get away, who in their automatic thoughts could say, I don't need you anyways, I have to get away. They get busy, they avoid. Okay, so otherwise known as an avoidant in the attached relationship language. And then we have a pursuer. The pursuer is someone who wants to stop the person, can be very confrontational or wants to have the conversation right away, doesn't want to wait, is kind of going after them. What's wrong? What's going on? Talk to me. So neither is good or bad. There's no attachment to this way that we choose with the roles that we take in the relationship. It's just from the patterns that we created when we were younger. So the good thing is that we can recognize these patterns by understanding the raw spots. So Dr. Lola, do you want to share some of the raw spots?
Yes, absolutely. I would say like for pursuer, being excluded is very common raw spot. And number 5, when someone turns away from them, that is a very common as well. Not being valued, I would say, like for both withdrawers and
Yeah.
pursuers, it could be.
Mhm.
For withdrawers, show of disapproval is a big one, because their biggest fear is that no matter what I do, it's never good enough. Like I'm not
Mhm.
good. And number 9, dislikes you or views you negatively. For pursuer, number 10, communicating your needs and getting ignored. That's very common. Being judged as not good enough, I would say that's a withdrawer, I would say. And someone is trying to change you, that also a withdrawer, because pursuers will push, right? Talk to me, tell me, come on, tell me. And the withdrawer says, no, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to tell you. So there's always a distress about that. Someone is making demeaning comments, I would say that's probably for pursuer, because often what withdrawers do is they hit and run, that they make a demeaning comment, they make a sarcasm, and then they shut down and they run away. Or it could be also for withdrawer, because pursuers sometimes will push and make sarcastic comments just to get a response from you. So it just depends. And someone close to you being aggressive or intimidating, so I would say that's for pursuer and withdrawer both. So it's interesting that many of these raw spots come in both sides, but for withdrawers, they often come in a very small part, because it's hard for them to tune into the raw spots and share those raw spots. For pursuers, you mostly find that they have a lot of raw spots, because they openly can they can list all 16 raw spots because they feel so rejected and disconnected.
Well, there you have it. So the good thing is we have the ability to change those patterns, and not that we want to change your behavior, but we really would like to enlighten you and bring awareness and bring light on these sensitivities so that you could have so much more peace within you and have so much more strength and tools to have the conversations needed to create that really amazing workplace environment that you can just get up every morning and be so excited to be part of. So
Exactly.
one more reminder that next Wednesday, the 28th, we have the Skill L&D Trainers Weren't Taught But Desperately Need webinar at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. We value your time and your commitment to creating an excellent workplace. My name is Polina, and this is the Leader in You podcast brought to EMC Leaders, brought to you by EMC Leaders. And this is the amazing Dr. Lola Gershfeld.
Thank you, Polina. This was very nice. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we hope to see you soon.
Next week. Bye.
Next week. Bye.